Next up, let's look at CSS positioning. You may be familiar with absolute, relative, sticky, and fixed positioning. Once this type of position is declared, you can change the exact placement of the element via the physical properties of bottom, top, left, or right. Of course, in logical properties, these have new names and new shorthand values. The four values include inset block start, inset block end, inset inline start, and inset inline end. You may also use the shorthand properties of inset block or inset inline, and even inset by itself will work just fine. It's worth noting that while inset properties are part of the logical properties specification, the values are physical values like 10 pixels, 30%, or 2 rem. The location of these values may change with the writing mode, the direction, or the text alignment, but the values themselves do not change. In this challenge, you'll create a page layout like this using CSS positioning. As always, don't change the starting HTML or CSS. There are several answers to this challenge. Pause the video to take on this challenge. Here's how I solved this challenge. As always, you want to start by taking a look at your HTML. And the HTML for this example is not all that different from what we had previously. So we have an article and we have an aside. These are next to each other. If you're wondering about how they're nested, you can always collapse your code to take a look at a simplified structure. So inside of our article, we have headings and paragraphs and images and such. And inside of the aside, we have the same. But we're looking at putting these two elements next to each other somehow here on the page. There are many possible answers to this. I used absolute positioning to do my particular solution, but you could have used relative positioning. You may have even used something like fixed positioning or sticky positioning to do this. First of all, we start with our container. I set our writing mode here to vertical RL, which would turn everything on its side. And of course, I have the display of flow root here to clear any floats that we have that are causing issues. For the article, I set this to have a position of absolute and then the inset inline start of 220 pixels and an inset block start of 0. So in other words, what I wanted to do was put this all the way over on the right side of the page to match the writing mode. And I wanted it 220 pixels down from the top of the window here. And then for the aside, the way I dealt with this one was I set it also to absolute positioning. But in this case, the inset block start and the inset inline start are both 0. In other words, 0, 0 right here is the top right corner of this web page with the vertical right to left writing mode. So that is why we are thinking about 0, 0 up here on the top. That is how I approach this. The width of my aside is 200 pixels. So by setting my article to 220 pixels for its start, we have room here for my aside, 20 pixel gap, and then my article that starts right after that. Obviously, we have some issues here. This page is not responsive, and it would certainly fall apart under other various layout conditions. But the goal here is to get you familiar with logical properties, and that is why we are working on this.